I should be less than an hour from getting done, and I have just made a royal mistake. Hey, it's Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and I'm going to go on and try to do some work on the Rhino here. But it was starting to have some problems when you put it in gear, not accelerating real well, also driving down the road. It felt like it was bogging down. The speed would slow real dramatically, like you let off the accelerator. I started off by changing the oil. Not that I expected that to fix it, but it needed it. Also replaced the air filter and the fuel filter. I was planning on replacing the drive belt, but when I found out they were $120, I decided to wait and see if that other stuff fixed the problem, and it did not. So I ordered the drive belt, and I'm going to go put it on. Yesterday evening, I started pulling it apart to replace the belt. And yeah, let me turn the camera around and show you what we got. So I pulled the belt off, and I was told that the belt was just worn. New belt is about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more thicker than the old belt, and it's just from the wear and tear of that belt apparently. So I went to put the belt back on, and there are 2 bolts in this front sheave, and unfortunately I broke them off in doing this and created another problem for myself. I'm trying to put this thing on there without the bolts, and it is incredibly difficult. Unfortunately, like an idiot, I put a crowbar in between that aluminum thing and marred up, or that secondary sheave right there where the thing is. Let's crank her up and give her a try. So at first, the test drive went really well. You can see here that it seems to be going well. I got down into the road a little bit and started hearing all kinds of racket and noise. And realized that there were still problems. Part of the problem you can see there, it'll only drive about 8 or 9 miles an hour. It shows that you're going in forward and reverse. All things are messed up. I have gotten in over my head with this Rhino. Let me show you what's going on. I had a little bit of issue, thought it was the belt slipping, and there was some belt slippage. But then started finding some other problems with it. And as it turns out, I'm having to replace the wet clutch. So this box up here is basically just that front clutch. They call it the secondary clutch, but it's actually just a sheave. And then we've got the clutch that'll fit in here like so, I'm assuming. When I first started this project, I was completely overwhelmed by the thought of taking not just the seat off, but the covers for the CVT parts of the transmissions and everything else. But right now, I'm taking off the cover for the crankcase. That's actually inside the engine. I had to drain the oil to actually get in there. And this is well beyond anything that I've ever done. But I can't, I'm shaking the whole motor. Well, it's well after dark now. Finally got the crankcase cover, whatever you call that thing, off. There were 2 pins, one here and one there, kind of alignment pins. So now I'm going to get the impact wrench, take that old clutch out. One of the things that Mike, he came over to give me a hand getting that cover off. He said that's real burned right there, and was probably the cause of so much of the slipping. It's always nice when neighbors come by and say howdy. So the next thing to do now is clean off this ring, and then we'll go for the next steps. For 2 hours now, I've been trying to scrape the gasket off of this covering. I hope I haven't marred up that cover too much. You can see that it scraped a bit. Yeah, that's bad. Anyway, I'm probably going to have to fix that. So I decided to try brake parts cleaner and see how that works. Maybe that'll clean that gasket off some. There's a few little black dots left that I've got to get. Brake part cleaner, it's not a miracle cure, but man, it makes things so much easier. When I left last night about midnight, I still had little bits of stuff there. When Mike comes, I'll find out later, but I don't know if I've marred that up too bad. And so I went to Napa, and I've got this gasket maker to fill in those gaps if I gouged it too much. When Mike came, he said I didn't gouge this material too much, and I don't really need that seal maker, gasket maker, but he said if I put it on and then apply that gasket, it'll help the gasket hold in place while I'm actually putting everything together. Oh, I'm putting it on the wrong thing. Gosh, that's the casing for the... I knew I was messing something up. That's where the plastic case, there's just a rubber seal that goes there. Alright, that's ready to go. I've got to put the seal in here and then the bearing on the back, and I'm ready to put it on. Let's do the seal first. Gotta find a way of tapping that in. Man, I hope this fits on right. It'll be nothing short of a miracle if it does. Oh man. Oh, there it goes. It's in there. Well, I'll be. Alright, there's that cover. I just gotta bolt it down. So I couldn't push that pulley on, it's catching on the spindles. So I'm tapping it with the wrench and that board, and as soon as it gets tight on, as soon as I got enough slack to get that nut on there, I'm gonna tighten that joker down. All I'm doing is putting the bolt in here, and it slides that opening over so that the belt goes in easily. I'm gonna look at the parts diagram. That was too easy. I should be less than an hour from getting done, and I have just made a royal mistake. And I think I'm gonna have to tear this whole daggum thing apart and start over. It's downright depressing. I'm not sure whether that snap ring was supposed to be placed into the new one. I'm gonna go back and look through this video and see if that snap ring is in the new one, and we'll find out soon enough. I boogered up by putting the washer on this one. I should have looked at it, but it goes on this one. So I got to go take that off. The other thing I'm not sure about is whether or not this belt is supposed to be turned a particular way or not. Well, I got it just about ready to go. From here, all I've got to do is put on the seats, but tomorrow morning, I've got to add engine oil. Plan on picking y'all up then. I'm about to put all the work of the last few weeks to test on this Yamaha Rhino. After all that, I'm going to put engine oil in this thing, crank it up, and give it a test run, and hope and pray that she runs. If y'all have any favor with the Almighty, it'd be good if you throw some prayers up for me right now. So after I got the seats and everything else back on, I cranked it up. I went to put it in gear, and it started grinding gears. Short of a long story, when it's on idle, this is what happens. As you can see, it's idling, and that transmission belt or that drive belt is spinning. That is not supposed to happen when you have a wet clutch like this. I was just disgusted. I didn't get any video of it. I was so daggum aggravated. I just had to stop for the day. Talked to Mike late that next night, and along with Alex. So it's the next day. I was so aggravated yesterday when this thing wasn't working right. I just stopped the whole daggum thing and quit working on it. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I was afraid it was a problem with the clutch, with the wet clutch. So what I've got to do is go back inside the crankcase. I've got a roller bearing that's turned the wrong way. Anyway, one-way roller bearings don't turn one direction. I will show you how and why in a minute. But I've got it backwards, and I'll show you how I made my mistake as well. Maybe it'll save somebody else some hassle. So here's where my most obvious mistake is. When I had the old drum turning, I could turn it counterclockwise counterclockwise, and now it's turning clockwise. You would think that a one-way bearing only turns one way, and that was my assumption, but it does not. It only engages the axle in one direction. It's supposed to turn freely counterclockwise, and it's turning freely clockwise. Herein lies part of the problem. I can't get that pulley. I had to drive on. It's been almost 5 hours now, and I've had the devil of a time getting this secondary sheave assembly off. It was machined real tight, and so I had to kind of tap it on. I have borrowed 3 different gear pullers, pulley pullers, from my farmer who works on large equipment down the road. But unfortunately, none of them were able to grab the back without hitting the front, and it just, as you tighten them down, it pulls that back side. So I went and purchased this to pull it off. After messing with that gear puller for 5.5 hours, it took less than 20 or 30 minutes to take the crankcase cover off, switch that bearing around, put it all back together. And then I realized I had yet another problem. That is not supposed to be spinning like it is in neutral. That means either the wet clutch is not working or the one-way bearing is not in the right direction. And the one-way bearing is in the correct direction now. Uh-oh. This came apart. I gotta stop and figure out where it goes. So the next afternoon, I decided to go on and try to put everything back together and just see if maybe that wet clutch was sticking. Sometimes new clutches can stick, is what Mike told me. He's kind of the one that's been coming over and taking a look at this thing. And so I started putting it back together, and that, as I did that on that secondary sheave, parts started falling out of it. I had no idea what to look for, so I decided to take apart this old secondary sheave and just see what it looks like on the inside. So once I took it apart and actually saw what it looked like, it was just some little parts, weights that came apart. So I took apart the new one, put it back together, put everything on, and that's where I'm picking you up now. Uh-oh. Well, I'll be. Mike said maybe that clutch just needs a little work. I'm gonna see if I can put it in gear. There's Mike. He is my own savior. Woo! The test drive in the Rhino went fine. It actually drove 44 miles an hour before the governor kicked it off. It was doing it at 35, and a year or two ago it was doing it at 39 or 40. So the new belt certainly is worth it, and then the clutch is working too. It did not do that driving and then stalling, which I think was the wet clutch issue. So the Rhino's been working well for a couple of days now, and it's never run smoother since I've used it. My favorite thing about this, as frustrating as it was, as irritating as it was, and to be honest with you, as flat out demoralizing and depressing as it was at times, I enjoy doing new things day after day, learning to do new things, and being capable of doing things myself. I did have a lot of help from 2 people particularly. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you got some value out of it, if you found it interesting, if nothing else, if you enjoyed watching me get frustrated over this machine, share it with somebody you think may find it interesting or useful or helpful. Until next time, take care and have a great day.